Hello and welcome to another episode of Mic'd. I am Shane Page and I am the host of this, the official podcast of St. Michael Catholic Church, Gastonia, North Carolina. And I am here once again with the sterling Father Rossi from a great weekend that we had here. You know, it was a great weekend that we'll have a chance to talk about. And by the way, for those listening, I'm the Director of Evangelization here at St. Michael. And I just came across, it was a year last week. Or no, it was a year of employment 2 weeks ago, July the 1st.
July the 1st.
Yeah.
Praise the Lord.
Praise the Lord. And what a year it has been.
St. Junipero Serra's feast day.
On July the 1st?
Yeah. So,
okay.
I mean, I think that's very appropriate. Missionary evangelist brought Catholicism to America.
Well, it's been
California.
Awesome. Yeah, it's been awesome, and I'm privileged to be here, and I just thank God every day.
We're very blessed to have you.
Well, I mean, and this is just an amazing parish in so many ways. But let's talk a little bit about it. It's been a couple of weeks. Last week the offices were closed. We didn't get a chance to do a podcast. But we are just now really in the wake. Is the wake the right word? We've just come back from a fantastic trip with some of the St. Michael youth, some of the high schoolers, to Atlanta, the Steubenville conferences.
Yes.
Just an amazing time, an amazing weekend. I want to get your thoughts on that. Father Mike Schmitz was the priest.
Yes.
I'll say a few words about him, but what were your impressions during that weekend?
Well, this for those listening, it was a Life Teen Youth Conference. They have a few of these annually in different locations. So this was just outside of Atlanta. So this is what they call the Steubenville Atlanta Conference. Steubenville, of course, is a city/town in Ohio. So, you know, we're not going to Steubenville, but the Life Teen movement, I think, somehow grew from Steubenville. I think I'm not clear on the history of Life Teen too much, so I'll just mention that right out of the gate. But last year was our first time as a parish taking some of our youth to this Life Teen Atlanta conference, and we took about 15, and it's highly, you know, the music experience and the liturgy experience is very different from what we experience here at St. Michael, but I think in general it's different from any parish because it's in a large conference center, so nobody's used to that for Mass ever. But it was, I think, overall a new experience. It kind of challenged the youth to, a different environment where Mass is offered in large convention center. Praise and worship music is the main genre. You know, there's a little bit of some traditional hymn that they do for adoration. But I think by and large the students last year went, of course that was 2021, so that was the first conference since the COVID pandemic, so they hadn't had their 2020, so they just moved it to 2021. And they had some great speakers for the youth, and I was able to listen to a lot of those talks. And I think overall the students had a great experience. Of course, many of them returning again this year. We were, I guess, 31 total youth, right?
Mm-hmm.
That came along from St. Michael. We had a few from another parish that was nearby that did not have a large enough group, so we were happy to have these young people. They had a great experience, as I understand. And I think that what strikes me for the weekend is so I think it said about 2,100 youth from kind of all over. Apparently there were even people from Alaska.
That's right. We had a group from Alaska. It's amazing.
And you know, I think for the young people to see all the other young people, I think if I was a teenager and went to something like that, it would be very moving to see. Look at all these Catholic teenagers. You know, I mean, it's a massive gathering, you know, and they have a lot of fun with the kids, and but you know, and there, you know, there is a lot of activities, and there's kind of there's a concert really for the kids to just kind of go crazy in the beginning to get them all riled up, and then calm them down for the talks and the meditations, but you know, just for the kids to have a joyful time, make a joyful noise, and they made a lot of noise, you know. It's sort of funny to see them, but it's a moving weekend because, you know, they do lead these teens, you know, into deeper conversion, deeper relationship with Christ. So many of them haven't been challenged or even invited into that. And a lot of our young people from St. Michael have on some level, but I think that what Life Teen really seeks to do is pull them out of just the Sunday Mass experience, meaning for a lot of Catholics, their experience of Christ in the church is Sunday 1 hour a week. And that's it. If they have a strong youth group at their parish, who knows, right? But just to try and really, and even for us as adults, as priests we were blessed to be there. But the main pillars of the weekend, is certainly Mass, but they really push confession and adoration of Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament.
Yeah, there were over 1,000 youth, they tallied, who went to confession that weekend.
They said within a day and a half, we priests probably heard about 1,100 confessions.
Right.
So about half the group.
Praise God.
Praise the Lord. So there was this conference weekend was very heavy on confessions, which is wonderful because they intentionally are presenting the talks on, different ways for them to deepen their relationship with Christ, turn away from sin. One talk explicitly mentioned, pornography and sins of lust, which acknowledging the young people face these challenges in a very real way, and then just telling them, okay, go to confession. If you haven't been to confession yet, go. And Father Mike Schmitz, I think, tried to have a little competition between the girls and the boys, and so the girls lined up in droves, I think, when the invitation came, for the confession, and the girls went, because a couple of talks they separate the boys and the girls. The girls kind of came out in large numbers for confession, so we were busy. But it is a great experience. It's very moving. We priests are very blessed to hear those confessions, and just the students' desire for conversion, once they are decidedly ready to go to confession. Just the experience I have is just they're so ready to just be done with sin, and they want to choose Christ.
At that age especially, I think what's so effective about it is that I remember being 16, 17 years old, and if someone among our group, a peer, would have done something, I tend to follow along. Right. I want to do it as well. Yeah. And so to see 2,100 youth, and then all of a sudden, lines of people going to confession, it induces something. It would make the youth want to go as well. So I think it's really that the way it's structured was very effective. Right.
They want to show the communities. They want to show the students what they're doing. Yes. They want them to see each other lining up, participating, so certainly that visual witness is powerful.
Well, you had said something, I loved your illustration. You're in one room and among other priests, and it's face-to-face confessions more or less.
Mostly
face-to-face, and then you're right outside, well, you're inside, and just outside of that space would be the courtyard. Yep. And this is where where the kids would gather. Tell our listeners and our viewers what you saw and connect that to confession.
Well, it was it was beautiful. So, because we're in this conference room, so they have a large room with chairs spread out for the priests and the penitents, the students to come in, the youth for confession. And the wall, one of the walls of the rooms was just all glass, and it looked out into the courtyard of the conference center. And the kids were out there playing ball, frisbee. They were making up dances and just kind of doing these dance games, activities. I don't know, it was kind of like Ring Around the Rosie or something, kind of what remind me. But they would gather in double circles, and someone on the inside would do a move, and they would have to go, and they would just kind of double circle around each other, and just lots of just playfulness, and it was a beautiful day. And we sat in that room for several hours throughout the day, and I just, it was like trying to listen and pay attention, and then right in front of you. But I learned later that the glass was only one way, so you couldn't see the courtyard. And if you're at the courtyard, you couldn't see into the room where we were. So it was because of the glass had like must have had like a tint on it or something for the sun. And anyway, just kids would like look in their reflection in the mirror, in the glass.
Yes, they're looking. And you're right behind them.
Yeah, and I'm like right there, and they're just
they're making silly faces.
Yeah. So, but it was just the sense that we had heard all these confessions all day long, and it was like literally they would leave, they would go do their penance, and then you just got the sense that a lot of kids were then going outside, joining their groups and their peers, and just enjoying the free time that was there for them to kind of recharge. So it was, the cleansing of the sin, like what was happening is that we were moving all this spiritual muck from their lives, and their hearts were being freed, and so they were literally going outside dancing the dance of the joyful, the redeemed. You know, that these children, these young people, having experienced going to confession, some of them for having not gone in a while, you know, and it was just a funny, beautiful analogy where on one side of the glass there was all this confession and absolution going on, and then on the other side, outside, the kids are just all out there just having a great time with each other, and it was just that joy, that playful joy of just, well, this is what being freed from your sins does.
And this is what Catholicism should be about as well.
Yeah, and so it was just a beautiful reflection.
I tell the members of my previous RCIA class that, you know, we hear about the stereotype of Catholic guilt.
Right.
And someone had mentioned that to me, not just a stranger. Well, you know, I was a Catholic, and, you know, we're good at Catholic guilt. I always say we're about joy. And I can remember my first confession and the joy that I felt, and then the joy that we saw all over the place, you know, after confessions. It was just a wonderful gift to see. Father Mike Schmidt, that was the first time I'd ever encountered him before, and the way he led. I've got to admit, he is impressive.
Absolutely.
I mean, the way he was able to connect with these high schoolers, not anybody can do that, but they were all just enraptured by him and by what he had to say. He did just a phenomenal job. Was that your thought as well?
Oh yeah, I you know, being a priest, and of course he's a priest, so for Mass we got to, you know, the priests all vested in the same area in the conference center before we entered for the Mass, and so there were times just to be able to just talk with him and greet him, and you know, he was very friendly, very, you know, easy to be around, and, you know, I tried not to be like a priest group, be like, hey, can I have your picture, Father Mike? You know, I'm doing the Bible in a year, you know, which I am, you know, doing all that. But I did get, we got a nice little group photo with him, with other priests from our diocese and some of our seminarians that were there because their parishes were attending the Life Teen Conference, were in the photo. So it was nice to have a picture with him. And but I thought the same thing. I think he simplifies the faith in a way that's easy for the young people to grasp onto. He uses great analogies with a lot of what he teaches, you know, which of course reminds me of Christ. Christ used analogies, examples from daily life, and if you can do that well, that's always a win. But yeah, he really challenged the youth with his homilies. I mean, I think he really gave them direct challenges, but presented Catholicism in a relationship with Jesus in just such a very authentic way. You know, that Jesus is real. He's a real person. You can have a relationship with him. So yeah, I thought with you, he just is very gifted, and I pray for him. And I told him the Sunday morning for Mass, I mentioned that I was going to offer Mass for him, for his intentions, because I said, you can be all over the place. Maybe that doesn't happen so much because he's not in a parish. He's told me he's been 18 years. He's still in the same assignment. He's in the Duluth Diocese in Minnesota, so he is at a youth campus ministry for Newman Center.
Is that where Bishop Barron's going?
No, Bishop Barron is in Winona, which is the southern diocese
so he's in
of Minnesota. Yeah, but he's a couple dioceses to the north from there. But just, he's been 18 years in college campus ministry, which is a unique thing. But not being in parish life, there's a different kind of stability in parish life. So I was happy to just brotherly, fraternally, as a priest, just offer that Mass for him and all that because you can just tell he's involved in a lot. He's got the Bible in a year. They're doing, I think they said he's doing the Catechism in a year now. And just, it's a lot of responsibility when you become a very popular speaker in the Catholic Church, to kind of be the one that you're tapped to come to this big conference and that big conference. So, I mean, I can only imagine there's a lot of challenges with that kind of a lifestyle and you saw the young people when they introduced him, he just was like a rock star coming out. Yeah. They were just all on their feet, standing ovation, yelling and screaming, and and he did spend some time with him at the end of the final Mass on Sunday. He was upstairs on the mezzanine level, and let a lot of youth who kind of figured out that he was up there, went up there for selfies and pictures, and he was happy to be there and talk to him, But that's a lot of responsibility, to be able
yeah.
to have energy to do that.
But I really appreciated one of the messages he said, and we'll move on to the other topic because I want to talk about the other thing as well. When he preached this homily on fear to the gathering, and he says, fear on the one hand is something that keeps us alive. Fear is a natural good that God has bestowed upon us to keep us alive. But he says, but fear also will keep you from living.
Yep.
And he says, and we always fear when doing great things for God. And he said, if you feel scared, do it anyway.
Right.
Now, I've shared this with you, and people who know me have said this as much. That spoke to me because I've always thought of myself as suffering from pusillanimity, and which is just a fancy word of smallness of soul, and it is the counter to magnanimity, which is largeness of soul. And all the great saints have largeness of soul. In other words, they wanted to do great things for God, whereas I've always been, here's what we would like for you to do, Shane. We want you to go to speak at this church on X. My first instinct is always run the other direction. No, I can't do it. I will fail. And it's very much like the scene in the Old Testament where Moses sends the spies. They come back, and the spies say about the promised land that God was going to give them, that they were going to inherit. We are just like grasshoppers. We're doomed to fail. And then Caleb comes and says, we've got this. The Lord is with us. And I just remember saying, yeah, okay, well, if I feel that way, I'll just do it anyway. So that it wasn't just for the high schoolers.
Right. No, of course not. I took, just so the listeners know, there's always a theme, usually a one-word theme for the conference. And so this year
fearless.
It was fearless was the theme. And, they said, Jesus said, or at least in the scriptures, all the scriptures, do not be afraid, or some reiteration of that was 366 times in the Bible. There's do not be afraid, fear not, some derivative of that. And then I think they said there's one for every day of the year, and then 366 for the leap year, kind of thing. So, but it's true that it does seem that from the beginning of time, they did go back to the point of the fall in one of the talks about where are you? We live in fear from God because of the fall, and so we are always struggling with that, fighting against the fear of just following the Lord without reservation. And everyone's struggling with that. It doesn't matter how old or young you are, you're going to face that. So I did like the distinction between fear is good. We need fear to make sure that we help ourselves stay healthy and safe, but we can't live in fear because it prevents us from doing what we certainly need to do. And just taking the risk, talking about the saints, as Father Mike said, they did it scared.
They did it scared.
If you do it anyway, but do it scared, then just do it.
But because the pusillanimous person,
right,
they look at their own weaknesses, and actually pusillanimity, according to Aquinas and others, that is a symptom of pride. It looks like humility. I can't do it, but it's actually a form of false humility. Whereas the magnanimous person does not look at whether I can do it or not. The magnanimous soul is someone who says, God is with me, and by the grace of God, if he has called me to do this, it shall be done.
Right.
And that's actually humble, whereas the pusillanimous small soul person is filled with pride. So it's always a good way to remind me of what that really means. And in the Bible, it's not so much the fear of failure that trips people, it's the fear of success. It's the fear of doing great things, and we can fear that just as much as we can fear to fail. We can fear great successes. I want to share with everybody, what the great moment for me, and it became a joke for the rest of the trip. But on Saturday night there was this massive adoration event. I don't know how else to describe it. It was an event, and it probably went 2.5 hours.
Probably about, yeah.
And there was Father Mike Schmitz processes with the Blessed Sacrament in this wonderful monstrance. It's the largest monstrance I had ever seen, the largest host I'd ever seen. And it was very emotional. So after we get back from the event, and we're doing small groups in the hotel, I was reflecting as one of the small group leaders with some of the high school boys. And one of them looked at all of the rest of them around the table, and he says, man, everybody was in tears. everybody was crying. Did y'all notice that? Everybody. Well, I looked around and everyone's crying. And then he says, except for Shane Page. I looked over at him and he had this stone cold look on his face. And the reason why it was so funny to me is because, and this is what I want us to talk a little bit about, and because I think this might actually benefit some of our listeners. The reason it was so funny to me is because I have always been someone who has never really experienced any kind of emotion when I'm in the presence of the Lord. I can remember going to seminary at Duke, and there was a moment when everybody was holding hands and there was music playing and everybody is just overflowing with tears. And I'm sitting there going, what in the world is everybody being moved about? Now, I had an emotional moment at my conversion at the Billy Graham crusade, but I have never felt any kind of emotion. I didn't there, but it doesn't mean I wasn't worshiping. So talk with everybody about your own experience, maybe some of the teachings of the saints about the role of emotion vis-a-vis our relationship with God. Share with everybody about how we should understand their interplay in the devotional life.
Well, I mean, our emotions are good because God gave them to us, but they're not always ordered well and rightly. I think so. We have to allow our will to inform our emotions, and the danger can be that prayer and emotion are the same, like if I'm having an emotion, I'm having good prayer, or that I ought to have emotional experiences when I pray at all, regardless of the emotion.
Right, I don't feel anything.
Right, I don't feel anything.
I don't feel anything.
Yeah, and so I think that as prayer life matures, and we grow, there'll be a lot of times when you're not, what emotion you have, I'm not having an emotion. I'm in the presence of the Lord. I'm here by faith. I choose to be in the chapel. I choose to kneel or sit or stand or what, and that, I found it somewhat moving to see the children, the young people, very moved, during the adoration, during the procession of the Blessed Sacrament through the students. Is what they do is the priest walks slowly through the crowd of students through the aisles and bringing the monstrance very close to
yes,
to the
Jesus was very close.
Right, so the students really get an opportunity to be, as they say, eyelash to eyelash, eye to eye with the Lord, when the distance between them is maybe even less than a foot, depending on where Father is moving at the time. And so I found that moving to see them, but I didn't really, I wasn't crying, and I didn't cry last year.
Well, that makes me feel better. Thank you.
Yeah,
I did not know that.
But I don't know. It was delightful. It was like a father happy with his children having a great experience. But I think that's one of the things that Life Teen, Father Mike Schmitz, really pushed that before the adoration procession began was, we're here tonight for adoration, be with Jesus. This is not about an emotional experience. Yes, we're going to have music, and yes, we're going to sing, and if you want to sing, fine. If you don't, don't. If you want to stand, fine, kneel. When the Blessed Sacrament comes near you, kneel. But if you want to sit after a while, fine. If you want, just trying to get the kids be free to feel free to pray. If they want to put their hands up while they sing, fine. If they don't want to do that and keep their hands folded, fine. But the whole thing was, it's not about what emotion are you having, and and if I'm not having a particular emotion, then maybe I'm not praying right. He says that's false. This is not about having an emotion and therefore I'm praying.
Well, because God can't be reducible to an emotion.
No, and I think that's the whole idea. I think what Father Mike clarified was, if you're here and you don't have any emotion and you're just praising the Lord and you're just kneeling in adoration, then good for you. That's a gift. He even said it's a gift not to have an emotional response. Is just sort of this, I kind of feel kind of dryness, or I'm not really moved in any particular way. Is something wrong with me? He says, no. Basically his point was, no, there's nothing wrong with you. And because we're not here for the emotion, we're here for Jesus. And ultimately, it's an act of the will. We choose to be in His presence.
That's right. Love is an act of the will. Right. So to love God is not necessarily the feeling of loving God. It is to will to love God.
And even singing and praying and being at this conference where it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, as it were, with the way praise and worship and music can be. That even if it's just, I'm I'm setting this aside. My preferences would be this way or that way, or I, would prefer it all in silence. There's plenty of our youth that enjoys silence and adoration, which is true. And that's really the goal. You want to end up being in silence with the Lord, and they had small periods of that too. But I think it's good to say that prayer really ultimately is meant to purify us of our emotions. And we live in a culture that just feeds only on emotion almost.
That's right.
There's very little reasonable dialogue or reasonable people publicly. If someone's upset, there's emotion everywhere. And it's like you can't reason with people in society in many ways anymore because it's all about, well, how do you feel?
Yeah, it's like, who was the singer? Oh, my goodness. Was it Neil Diamond? Hooked on a feeling, high on believing?
Oh.
There's a danger. But some people, though, you do see some of the saints speak about this, or it's referenced. Some people do have the gift of tears.
Sure.
I will say that my wife does. She has the gift of tears. She can be in the presence of the Lord. She can go to a mass, and spontaneously she will begin to weep. So much so that one of the deacons at the parish she often attends calls her Misty Christie. But I've never had that. And I'm always like, I want that.
Yeah.
But again, why do I want that? Because God
Right.
can't be brought in. He's not a feeling. God is not a feeling.
Yeah. And I think that the challenge with a personal prayer life for anybody is dryness. We can go to a whole other podcast about all those experiences, but when one doesn't have an emotional experience over a long period of time, just feels distracted, bored, disengaged, struggling, then I must be doing something wrong. My prayer is bad, or I've got to change something else. Well, a lot of times it's the Lord just inviting us into a deeper reality of His presence that, I'm here not because of what God's going to give me emotionally. I'm not here because I'll be able to have always this emotional response of joy and happiness, that's a deep abiding presence with God, to say even in the dryness, in this kind of experience where it might be like a desert, and not enjoyable in the sense of, the youth enjoy concerts and they enjoy
Sure.
lights and all the fun, those are enjoyable things, but that's not, if that was what prayer really was in the sense of, then it would be easy to go to pray because it's entertaining, enjoyable, and it's giving you an emotional, uplifting experience. But prayer is deeper than that. It can be that, and it can evoke that.
Sure, it
There's
can.
nothing wrong when it does. It's just that, and I think kind of just dovetailing into what the Mass really is, how we worship as Catholics. And they even made that point at the Life Teen Masses. You can worship sad, happy, angry, broken,
Angry.
courageous, fearful. Just everybody can worship at Mass. It's not about, okay, we want everybody to get in a good mood now. Let's get everybody in a good mood. And if you're not in a good mood, then something's wrong with you.
Well, St. John of the Cross and some of the great spiritual masters of the church, they would talk about a progression in unity, when in union with God, is that, and this is not to discount those with the gift of tears, but there can be that God can use emotions for a great end. That you need those at first. You need the feelings of consolation.
Right.
You need those feelings of joy. But as you draw closer to God in union, and because God is not a feeling, some of those feelings will begin to go away. And
Right.
it makes it feel as though God is distant or absent. But actually, now your relationship with God is by faith alone, not faith and feelings necessarily. It's my relationship. I'm connected to Him by faith, through the will, through my love. Therese of Lisieux, there's her image right there. She would actually say that in those moments of dryness, that's your opportunity. She would say that she almost anticipated and looked forward to those moments, because then she says, I have a chance to prove God that I love Him, not for what I'm experiencing, but for who He is.
Yes.
I'm going to will to love Him anyway. And even if I have no feelings, no consolation, whatever, I don't even have any words to speak, she says the very least I can do is say, I love you, and that is enough.
Yeah.
Whether it redounds to my benefit or not. So it's a moment of consolation. The last illustration from her is that, when other sisters in her convent would talk about these visionaries who would see this or these mystical experiences, she would say, I don't really need that. I just need the truth. And I love that. We cling to the truth of the Catholic faith.
Right.
And truth also is something that is not contingent on how we feel about it. Now, in our day and age, maybe there's a philosophy that would say that your truth is whatever you think it is or whatever you feel it is. But so, no, I guess maybe I did have a stone cold look on my face, but I did try to love the Lord.
You always really
Although I will say I kind of envy those who really feel the presence of God in mighty ways. That's a great gift.
Sure it is.
And the church needs those people, those saints too.
And I think that was what we observed. There were plenty of students, young people, kids that were, moved to tears when the Blessed Sacrament came by them, and some of them just bowed down in adoration after that.
It was beautiful others to see.
And others I think also just had a different response, or a response of not having a major response, just there, and I mean, I think the image that I just kept having was as the Blessed Sacrament was moving literally through the crowd of students, that it's Jesus walking through the streets. I mean, that's exactly all the and everybody in that room was broken. Like, no one's there like, well, I don't need the Lord. I mean, we all had that weekend to really realize again our dependence on the Lord. And many of those young people so hungry just to be healed from whatever experience, right? But I do know, and it hit me this time, like how important confession had been, because this long evening of adoration with this procession of Blessed Sacrament through the teens in the conference center was prepped by over 1,000 confessions. And I think if you didn't have that, there's no way that Saturday evening night of adoration would have been as powerful and effective, because the hearts wouldn't have been open. And by the time you get to the Saturday evening, a lot of those young people are so much more open to the Lord and ready and welcoming and throwing the doors of their lives open to the Lord because of confession earlier, Mass in the morning that day too, So the Life Teen Conferences really are and have a great impact in, I think, many teens' relationship with Jesus, at least in inviting them to have one, or deepen one, but also just their promotion of confession and adoration of the Blessed Sacrament. And then, of course, the end, they do the promotion of vocations. They really encourage the young ladies to come forward if they've ever felt a desire maybe to be, as Father Mike said, a bride of Christ, a sister. And then for the young men too, to be a father, and he did a great job of kind of encouraging both those separate moments of kind of coming forward at the end of Mass for a blessing for any young person who's thinking about it, right, and open to it. And it was neat to see and that last year it moved me very much, and this year too, all the other teens, just how supportive, when they stand up and walk forward from all directions of the conference center, they're coming from everywhere. It was amazing. I mean, I can remember last year when I saw this for the first time, I thought, there's probably 800 teens there, and I thought, maybe there'll be like 20 that come forward for the, the priests and sisters, and there were 100 or more.
It was amazing to see.
When they see that's a really moving moment of the weekend. But again, that promotion of the vocation of also married life, because also motherhood and fatherhood are important, right? And so just the way that they do it in a balanced and encouraging way, but just to see all these young teens that are really open to God's call, possibly not to the married life, but to religious life, consecrated life, and the ordained life. And so that, that really, what they do in 48 hours, what God does through Life Teen in 48 hours is pretty amazing, to get these young people confession, adoration, and even considering vocation. That's a lot to do in a short amount of time for young people that face tremendous challenges right now.
Well, I think just the takeaway is that the hope. I mean, that for anyone who's worried about, the Catholic Church is in decline. I mean, you didn't see any evidence of decline in that in that space, and that God's church will always prevail. I mean, God is going to have His church, and He's going to make His saints. And you see the future there, future saints. And it was just a wonderful experience.
Yeah.
So thank you, Father.
Sure.
For this moving conversation. I tried not to have a stone cold look on my face. Yeah. But if you are listening to have any questions for us or want more information about our parish, please visit our website at stmccg.org. And by the way, faith formation registration has begun. If you've got children or yourself or you're interested in becoming Catholic, go to our website, register. It is almost time to begin cranking out the new programming for the fall. But on behalf of Father Rossi, I am Shane Page. Thank you so much for listening. God bless.